My Life, My Way. You Gotta Dig Deep in Order to Blossom by Sofia Bothwel. A biography. Chapter 3. All emotions in the end are but surface agitations on this ocean of I am. Paul Bruton, The Quest of the Oversoul. Years later, walking past the theatre in which Les Miserables was playing on Shaftesbury Avenue, the overall realization I made was that all that fear my father and mother had about venturing forth in life was unfounded. I learned how miserable, no pun intended, they were. That they had somehow failed to be who they wanted to be. Who or what that was, I don't exactly know. Other than that my father would sometimes express a desire to have been a truck driver. But so much went unspoken in our family. I found it maddening. I knew this lack of positive communication was totally unhealthy, yet we all seemed unable to accept how unhealthy it was, or command any ability to change it. My parents appeared to be immune to their own emotional pain, yet expert in the fine art of dumping it. Maybe that's why I was born into that family, the sensitive child who could not ignore such pain, the pain that lack of true connectedness inflicts, the pain of the inauthentic life. I certainly was sensitive to the pains of those around me, so much so that I was prone to bursting into tears. I now believed that I was feeling not only my own sadness, but also the repressed sorrows of my family. Someone has described the Scots and the Irish as the masters of the sorrows. Was that one of my roles, part of my life's purpose, to be a master of sorrows? It so upset my mum to see me cry for, as she would put it, no apparent reason, that she would get angry and threaten to take me to the doctor, a sure tactic to shut me up, for I hated going to the doctors. So great was her need to not witness sorrow. Did it remind her too much of her own unresolved sadness? To me, of course, there was a very apparent reason for my crying. I was feeling sad. Isn't that a good enough reason to cry? Why did I live in a world that crying was to be avoided at all costs, especially if you were a man? If you were a drunk man, then it was slightly more tolerable. The drink allowed many a thing that sobriety forbids. Therein lies one of its advantages. When society goes wrong by condemning emotion, its peoples find outlets in other ways, only later to observe how functional or dysfunctional that new way may or may not be. Hopefully, in the end, through trial and error, finding the healthy alternative to the suppression of the dreaded emotion. Was that why I was exposed to the repression of sorrows in order to heal myself and one day teach people how to also heal themselves through allowing themselves to feel the feelings instead of repressing them through judgment and addictions? Even still, in my work today, my main aim is to convey the message it's okay to have feelings, in learning how to deal with them effectively, as opposed to suppressing them, is the key to good health, permanent slimness, and freedom from addictions. And after recovering from and studying addiction over the coming years through books and experience, I was to be given a sort of overview of several societies, a clear view of their positive and negative values, in order to define who I am in the being a society unto myself. The society does indeed live in the individual, for What is society but a mass of individuals with the same inner ideas, motivations, thoughts, and beliefs? And is it not true that if I, as a person, adopt new ideas, motives, and beliefs, then my inner and outer world is different? If a million people suddenly have those same ideas, motives, and beliefs, then we have a new society on our hands, even if its inhabitants are spread far and wide across our global village. Is that why new ideas, now and over the centuries, have been opposed and viewed with suspicion? Because the breakdown of society is the result of the new ideas flourishing. Or is it the evolution of society that occurs? I suppose it depends on the ideas. If a mass of individuals make the commitment to put love and wisdom before excessive monetary gain at the expense of others, then we have an evolution, a different society to that of individuals who put monetary gain before genuine love and wisdom. We each do indeed choose which ideas, beliefs, and actions to take on board as true and valuable. What each person thinks and feels and does is very important to the survival of the planet and our harmony thereon. A quote from Barbara Streisand: "All women should call their own shots, not in a militant manner, but with the conviction that they've got a hell of a lot to offer other than looking pretty and passive." End of quote. At 39, some 20 years after my initial immigration, some soul-searching questions arose. Why did my success frighten me more than my failure? Was it because I was on new territory here? No other woman in my family was ever self-employed, and in being her own boss, she called the shots. I had also called the shots in the two of my long-term relationships by saying enough is enough and walking out when I wanted and needed to for my own sanity. Now, would the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches not agree? This was too much power for a woman to have. After all, I did not support either of their viewpoints. I was neither a churchgoer nor ever married. My child also I chose not to have christened. Where would the churches be if everyone behaved like that, powerless? And if religion is really the cause of all wars, something I truly doubt, although it sounds simplistic, Protestant could no longer hate Catholic, for there would be no Protestants or Catholics. And where would the reality of world peace leave the armaments manufacturers? No war, they'd be out of work. Did the vested interests really fear that they would have to deal with poverty if they had to find work outside the military or armaments industry? I read somewhere that a nuclear submarine costs $1 billion. That's a lot of homes and decent food for our brothers and sisters of all creeds in many parts of the world. Many Maasai live off the blood and milk of their cattle out of necessity. The Maasai live in Kenya. We import green beans from Kenya. If food can be imported from Kenya, then food can be exported to the hungry in Kenya. So in this age of aeroplane travel and Land Rovers, not great roads in the outback of Kenya, getting the food and the materials there is not a problem. All it takes is one couple to raise some cash and take it directly to the village in need. Simple, effective, and a beginning in getting back in harmony with ourselves, each other, and our Mother Earth, on which all our food grows. Instead of people being oppressed through ineffective global financing, money could be channeled into food, water, and housing for all, a distribution that does not come hand in hand with pressure to give up all that is natural. For often it was the civilizing by the white missionaries of native tribes that outlawed or discouraged the use of their deeply meaningful rituals, drums, nakedness, shamanic healing abilities, and natural culture. This dissolving of their natural ways brought a loss of connection to the divine, each other, and Mother Earth, and the poor substitutes of alcohol, drugs, tobacco, TV, and soulless religion were introduced as a false coin that was given and started to reign supreme within a generation or two. Meanwhile, their home, the rainforests, got cut down to make newspaper, to tell us about all the horrors of drug and alcohol addiction and show us pictures of women's breasts. Was this, or was this not, the system? The system which I, as an individual, had stepped out of and was curiously watching the reactions of those still gazing out from within its parameters. Maybe this was why my presence in Ireland, some 20 years after my initial departure, was so unsettling to some, because deep down, those people feared the unknown. I did feel I shook some people on a very deep level. Maybe because I successfully upheld different beliefs to them, it caused their own beliefs to shudder. Thankfully, there were those, however, who warmly welcomed me, like a fresh spring breeze, into their lives. But the questions and issues I was processing at that time were extremely intense. Did I symbolize the unknown simply because I had experienced what was unknown to them? Did I symbolize the breakdown of society just because I did things a little bit differently, a little bit more individualistically, a little more truthfully? Or maybe my presence highlighted the fact that they could think for themselves if they chose to, just as I was doing, trying to find my way out of my then present predicament. This is how it happened. Chapter 4. A quote by Henry Miller. All growth is a leap in the dark, a spontaneous, unpremeditated act without the benefit of experience. The Adventure, 2003. After a brief visit to my friend in London, whom I asked if she could look after our cat, she couldn't. My 8-year-old son and I, together with our beloved Mog, departed for the night boat to Dublin. Ireland. On the boat I thought, am I indestructible in that no matter what pressure was exerted on me, I would stick to my convictions? It seemed to me that through meditation, my turning in to the part of me that was and is indestructible, that which goes beyond and is beyond, gave me more choices and empowered me to continue to be me and not be swayed too much by the currents of the flow by which I was being carried, however roughly, to where I did not know. The unknown had yet again asserted an otherworldly claim on my present and future, and I was feeling trepidation mixed in with my determination as turning within for guidance and support was thrust upon me as my only choice for navigational purposes throughout those dark waters of my life's experiences. Never stop dreaming, the old king had said. Follow the omens. Paulo Coelho, author of The Alchemist. We arrived at Dublin port. I was terrified and excited, grappling with fear. I had leapt into the unknown, but reassurance comes in infinite ways when you need it and least expect it. Mine came in the form of a middle-aged, bottle-blonde, very short-haired lady at baggage pickup, who chatted easily with a nervous me, telling me, "You've got to be flexible," as we discussed the strangeness of feeling alien in one's own country. Later I thought, she's a Buddhist. Her short hair and comforting manner, her tatty bag, which was her suitcase, a sure sign of renouncing wealth. She chuckled about the fact that it had burst open and a baggage handler had taped it together for her. When a large, red and white striped plastic shopping bag emerged on the carousel, I noticed that it was indeed held together with duct tape. Quite a sight. Something like my life, I thought. She may not have had much money, but she had priceless compassion, good humour, and the wisdom to laugh at life when it gives you burst luggage. I vowed to look at my predicament that way, for instinctively I knew that was the only way I could get through it in any way victorious. I felt as if life had just given me a burst life. Now, where was the guy with the duct tape? And was he married? she asked me. She asked me if I was going home, and I said, just a holiday, when really my future was terrifyingly uncertain. I felt she knew I was in need of comfort and did her best through her pattering words at baggage pickup to exude a spiritual knowingness that to me was mystical. I absorbed it. For feeling so unsure at that time, I did not know where to go or what to do, other than to land on my old school friend's doorstep, knowing she'd be delighted to see me, and that I could indeed stay with her for a short while, at least. On reflection, I can see now how I had just entered the void, and there had been a kind, wise lady there to meet me, to unknowingly reassure me that it was all part of a greater plan, and that when all seems lost, truly there is a benevolent Buddha somewhere observing the great scheme of things, and exuding a knowingness of the rightness of it all, and an assurance that life does indeed blossom again. In connecting with that, in knowing that, in experiencing that, even for an instant, lies our salvation. We just gotta dig deep in order to blossom, and that digging involves going into the darker depths of the soul and getting mucky. For on that cold December morning, as I dug, I felt deeply that no one cared, that no one was that bothered about my hopes and dreams, and that was the most terrifying part of it all. I think the stark realization that love and support were sorely lacking from without was indeed scary. Yet, that was exactly what I had to deal with. To do so, I turned within. When there is no one left to rely on, you rely on yourself and the divine. Maybe it's harder for a woman to do than a man. I do not know. But I do know that for a woman or a man to turn within surely heralds the divine balancing of the male and female energies within, and then the outer conforms. The love and support longed for is suddenly there within and without. Waiting in the bus queue, engulfed in that cold winter early morning darkness, I watched a young woman and her dog come across, running lightly across the forecourt to greet her beloved. It was beautiful, a scene from a happier movie than the one I was currently starring in. It gave me hope, and so my son, my cat, and I crammed on to the 6 a.m. bus outside Dublin's port, headed for Connolly Station, for a train that would bring me to my friend's house, my friend whom I hadn't seen in 6 years, my friend who didn't know I was coming. Maybe, I thought, if you settle here with your son, I would be able to greet my beloved from the boat one day soon. I pictured myself in a happier movie. How romantic, I thought, as the busload of swearing Irish, all well-oiled, lurched towards Connolly's train station, with a nutter at the front talking gibberish to a fed-up yet tolerant bus driver who was taking it all in his stride. After all, this was Ireland. We caught our train as the dawn emerged on an Irish horizon. We were on our way with some lovely synchronicities, reassuring me all was well. I slept some of the journey, which was only an hour long. I arrived to catch a taxi to my friend's house. It was Christmas Eve. And when I think about it, I guess it is true that people always arrive at the right moment, at the right place, where someone awaits them. Paulo Coelho. I had chucked in my rented house that I couldn't afford, and detested anyway because of the neighbours from the domestic violence club. and the landlord that decided to sell it 2 weeks after I'd moved in, thus leaving me with a variety of estate agents and prospective buyers traipsing around whenever it suited them, knowing that as soon as one actually bought the place, my son and I would be asked, politely and legally, to leave. I was beginning to feel a little overlooked. I had a huge credit card bill, a little income. I had run away from an ex who decided to stop giving me my maintenance checks, a system I didn't understand. The benefits man said they couldn't possibly pay all the rent of my two-bedroomed house because it was too big, leaving me only able to afford a smaller dwelling. Yet all the estate agents in town refused to rent me anything smaller or cheaper, claiming them to be too small for a mother and child, not to mention the fact that most landlords aren't that keen on single mothers, children and cats anyway. Month after month, too much was being stacked against me. That was choking me, the real me. That and the feeling of being under psychic attack, which had been looming for quite some time. I had ditched it all in one fell swoop. It had literally taken me one evening to pack up everything and decide to leave. I smiled as the dramatic saying my deceased mum used to say crossed my mind. Give me liberty or give me death. Or was I just a stubborn Irish woman? I needed time to think, to plan, to be. I needed Ireland, and Ireland was here. Nature doesn't create a storm that never ends. Within misfortune, good fortune hides. Dr. Wayne Dyer, author of Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And so, at 8 a.m. on Christmas Eve, I arrived on my friend's doorstep with my overweight cat and my 8-year-old son in tow, trying desperately to hold myself together, feeling very raw, yet very aware, despite my lack of sleep, very aware that I would get through this latest challenge that life had presented me with somehow. Already I was pondering what life lesson I was meant to get from this little lot. I said a prayer as I knocked on my friend's door. She answered my prayer and the door. She gasped, looked shocked, and grabbed me into a big hug, speechless and shaking. Her body seemed to wobble as I held her, although she wasn't overweight. Instantly I knew that she needed me as much as I needed her, and that it had been far too long since we had last met. I felt instinctively that my being around for a while would comfort her. She looked like I felt. She seemed as if she had been battered and bruised by time. We welcomed the chance to reminisce and catch up. She invited me in, she lit a fag, and I attempted to explain what I could barely understand myself. Now, this was the town where Colin and I had eloped to many moons ago. It was about 10 miles from my father's farm, where I grew up, so it held a lot of memories for me, and I knew its streets well. My mother and I would go shopping here on a Friday to get the groceries for the week, certainly the highlight of the week for us. It was the town in which my mother was born and lived in until she married my father. It was the town in which I attended the affluent grammar school, whose uniform not only denoted that we were Protestant, but also wealthy. There were some Catholic pupils, my friend Annette being one of them. She was a kind-hearted rebel, a vegetarian when few were vegetarian in Ireland. She had left another school and came to the grammar school, much to my delight, as she and I became good friends. Over the coming years, when I spoke of her, I always referred to her as more of a sister than a friend. Yes, this town held memories for me and history for me, and now its role would be to help me sort out my future, for here I could think, ponder, and allow whatever was for my and my son's highest good emerge. I would go with the flow. In my contemplation, I struggled to find my niche. I thought of Dublin. I thought of going on the dole. I thought of how I would manage to continue to home educate and resented the fact that I had to strive so hard for the life I wanted. However, I knew I created my own reality and I was sick of creating such a difficult one. I knew there had to be a way out of this misery that I had unconsciously created for myself. I was convinced there was a way for me to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. I was searching. as if there was a secret passage from darkness to light. The mysterious secret of how to create my life my way lay before me. I just wanted to be let in on it, and it was unravelling itself to me on a need to know basis, which put me in the position where all I could do was wait and watch and trust. I am speaking of an act of will, a concrete desire to do battle against everything that is unsatisfying in one's everyday life. Paulo Coelho. Sophia, you don't know how funny it is, my friend joked through a haze of cigarette smoke as she laughed with her 21-year-old daughter at the situation. I, only 2 days ago, said goodbye to the last of the 9 pups that my dog produced, and you arrive on my doorstep with the biggest cat I ever saw in my life. And they both howled with laughter. I managed somehow a somewhat shallow but well needed laugh, and saw again that life is indeed filled with jokes, if we could only see them. It amazed me and caused me to momentarily forget the tragic circumstances of my life that had led me pitifully to her doorstep and caused me to focus on the fact that my arriving with a rather large cat was so synchronistically bang on time as far as the comings and goings of canine and feline creatures from my friend's house as to have 2 Irish women rolling around their kitchen in fits of laughter. An Irish Christmas. After 48 hours awake, I was struggling to understand my fast talking, cigarette smoking, vodka downing friend. Well, it was Christmas. Following her conversation was nigh on impossible as I retrained my ears to the Irish accent, and she filled me in on some details that I would need to be aware of, seeing as I'd be about for a while. She worked 3 nights a week and slept late, so there was a good chance that I'd be the first up in the morning. She warned me to watch out for and hence avoid the poo and puddles that the 1 pup, which they had decided to keep, would eventually produce during the night on the kitchen floor. Again, the metaphor with my life was evident. And so, sure enough, that night, somewhat bleary eyed, I awoke as nature called, and I made my way downstairs to the bathroom when I realised I was in the middle of the kitchen surrounded by 3 dogs who had never met me before and would probably devour me for being on their territory. I froze. However, realising that my leg was not, in fact, being chewed off, I gazed down and saw wagging tails and noses that sniffed me curiously. I relaxed, extremely surprised, for my childhood humble Labrador would have barked the house down under some such circumstances. Simba, the leader and father of the family, seemed to pick up on my thoughts and barked softly about 3 times, making a token effort in house defence. Annette laughed when I told her. When my friend went to work that evening in the local pub, I sat by the real fire in her small front room and watched my son and my friend's daughter happily play. As I gazed into the flames and read Carol Adrian's book, When Life Changes or You Wish It Would, I knew that I couldn't have been reading a more appropriate book. It was on loan from Shrewsbury Library, over 500 miles away across the Irish Sea. Was I too on loan from England's green and pleasant land? Or had I been rudely expelled permanently to Ireland's loving embrace? I had yet to find out. Only the previous summer, I'd had a one-to-one numerology session with that best-selling author of the book I was currently reading. A busy summer it had been, where I had thought the work I was doing, organising a weekend workshop for an internationally renowned yoga master, would pay off my mounting credit card debt. It didn't. But I still held faith, knowing that things have a habit of working out in unexpected ways sometimes, and at least something was happening in my life. I just wasn't quite sure what, and I wasn't quite sure whether I liked it or not. Best just accept it and go with the flow, I mused, as I acknowledged the worry and fear and absorbed my surroundings. And in those surroundings, I was astonished to hear the word bleep so frequently uttered. It was like the whole town was annoyed about something. Indeed, on reflection, I did feel there to be a black cloud over that little Irish coastal border town that silently oppressed its citizens with fear and unresolved burdens that they cursed as they went about their daily business. Again, a reflection of some inner goings on. There is only one success: to be able to spend your life in your own way. Christopher Morlett, author. This is all about having it my way, I thought. Was I being selfish? Because in over 20 years I had made a habit of knowing what I wanted and was continually committed to that, no matter what. So many people would have said yes, but I was not really listening to them. I was too busy straining to hear that still small voice within, to be too bothered about what other people thought or said or did, especially when it was not in line with what I thought or said or did. Some months later, after I had come through that difficult time, I had a reading by a good medium I knew, and he informed me that I am not a selfish person. My mother was coming through, giving the medium this message to me, to reassure me that it was okay to do things my way. I felt reassured and glad she was on my side from the other side, so to speak. In that occupation, I learned one of the most spiritually productive truths that I now rely on each day of my life. When you do not seek or need external approval, you are at your most powerful. Carolyn Miss, author. Beautiful flowers grow in the winter too. Why was I, at this time in my life, having very little support in doing things my way, I wondered. Why did it sometimes seem like the world was against me? Just part of life, I presumed, and probably perfect in the lessons it was teaching me, albeit very uncomfortable. Yet I kept pondering the question, why was I having such opposition at that point in time to having things my way? The answer came: it's teaching you to have extreme strength in your convictions. I instantly loved the phrase, extreme strength in your convictions. Yes, it was so fitting too, for only under extreme pressure can extreme strength be found. About a month later, I found another clue in the title of Gary Zukav's book, The Dancing Wu Li Masters. The meaning of Wu Li is my way, along with four other connected concepts in that vein. It can also mean patterns of organic energy, as if transmitting the idea that my way is also the divine plan's way, destiny's way, a way that has been pre-programmed as a pattern of energy that is me at my deepest core of my being. Maybe that was why I felt so strongly about it. It was organic, very important, like it's part of me. To deny it would be to deny me. My life is a part of me, therefore I have the right to spend it my way. This is what I always felt to be a given truth for everyone. There is something integral, basic, vital, and source connected in doing things our own way, in line with what is right and true for us, in tune, if you like, with our own inner core. This urge to follow your dreams, as it were, can cause you to defy some of culture's imposed role models. It denies them power. They lose their value. Their pull is myopic compared to the blazing bright light of the chance of a core dream being realized. So you have millions of individuals saying and living the truth. I won't do things a certain way simply because it's the way things are done. It's simply not a good enough reason anymore to deny your true self. The way things are done is often severely dysfunctional. The way things are done has been for centuries and is now causing war, chaos, addictions, and violence. For me to do things my way is a saving grace, healthy and sane. Woolly also means nonsense. Yes, standing up in childbirth or claiming to have had a pain-free birth is nonsense to some. Not me, and many others who have had the experience. I chose to have a non-intervention pregnancy and birth, for I didn't want to be continually pushed aside by the medical machine that did not even have the sense to make proper use of a force as obvious as gravity. However, I can understand that if you have not had the experience, then you have no real knowledge of the truth of the matter, or at least no experience or knowledge of my truth of the matter. Wu Li also means I clutch my ideas. Yes, I, in living my life my way, have had to clutch my ideas when people tried to snatch or drain my power to implement my ideas in my life. People who wanted to control me through challenging my ideas. It is a tremendously empowering experience implementing your own ideas in your own life. Some people would like to prevent you from creating a life that is different to theirs or different to the norm. For in that difference, there seems to be something either threatening or envy producing or out of their control, and thus extremely annoying to them. Wu Li also means enlightenment. Was I walking the road to enlightenment just in being a stubborn Irish woman? Cool. What if I was right to stick to my guns? What if I was on the right track even though I was feeling terrible and everything seemed to have gone wrong? End of chapters 3 and 4. My Life, My Way by Sofia Bothwel. Available from Lulu Online Publishing and Amazon.